Good morning once again, everybody. This is going to end up being categorized as a funny, not funny. And it's why you shouldn't trust the water. Now, we have to start off with capitalism's wonderful ability to take any kind of waste product and turn it into money making machines. Okay. So, we're going to start with toothpaste. Now, a lot of people, if you look at the ingredients for a tube of toothpaste and dish soap, you will see one chemical agent referred to as triclosan. Triclosan is an old school pesticide. All right, one of the original pesticides for mass agriculture. Now, triclosan is very good at creating essentially bubbly suds when you agitate it. All right. Market demanded it. People wanted to know that their cleaning chemicals were actually cleaning. You want to see the toothpaste not just being a rough paste. You want to see it kind of foam up. You want to create the belief that it's actually, cleaning your teeth. And it can, but it's still you biologically warfaring yourself into a clean and healthy mouth or clean dishes. All right. Now, tied into this is another interesting byproduct fluoride. Where the hell did fluoride come from? Fluoride is a it's an element that is essentially mass produced at scale as a byproduct of aluminum production and refinement. Okay? There's a whole lot of it, and they didn't know what the hell to do with it. Now, if you go back to the Whip Me Spank Me camps of Mr. Mustache Men back in the day, you will find out that they fluoridated the water supply. Why did they fluoridate the water supply? Because fluoride increases the docility of the population. Okay? What does it do for teeth? Fluoride doesn't rebuild tooth enamel. It will harden it, but it doesn't regrow it. All right. And this is one of the things about marketing for toothpaste and oral hygiene products where they have consistently skirted that gray line of, false advertising by saying it can rebuild teeth. It doesn't. It hardens your teeth. Fluoride, at least to the extent that it improves your oral health, really it's a choice of if you brush your teeth with non fluoridated toothpaste, you'll likely have to pull them earlier. But if, of course, this is not medical advice, but if you use fluoride, all right, if you use fluoridated toothpaste, it will harden the enamel, so by the time you hit 40 or 50, you may have kept all your teeth, but the amount of cracks and chips and repairs goes through the roof. Okay? So, if fluoride, and one interesting side effect to the fluoride, there's also something referred to as fluorosis, where you essentially get like calcium deposits, etc on your teeth. And it can happen at an incredibly early age. Kids can get fluorosis. Essentially, fluorosis puts you in a position where it almost becomes like a runaway effect, where you get spotting of ultra hard enamel, ultra hard bone, because your teeth are bones. And it will lead to chronic fracturing and more chronic issues. All right. Fluorosis doesn't necessarily just stop at the teeth. Fluorosis can also get into the actual, bone, the porous bone of the jaw potentially. And it could also spread further than that. All right. That's not to say if you have fluorosis or you have calcium spots, it's the end of the world. You're probably going to be fine. But essentially, it's two different ways, fluoride versus non-fluoride, two different ways of still having to get a decent amount of teeth replaced by the time you're 50 or 60, if we make it that long. So why the hell is it in the American water supply? If it's good for your teeth, well, I mean, if you wanted something that was good for your teeth, why wouldn't you just put it in a mouthwash and just keep the water clear and clean? Why the hell would you put it in the water supply? For the same reason Mustache Man's Whip Me Spank Me camps do. All right, or it did. Did. Gotta emphasize the did. For the same reason, it makes people more docile. Now let's expand on that. So, a lot of people don't know this, but there was also a massive push before the COVID years. There was a push. Some of this push was triggered by some of those billionaires that some people like to fawn over so much to put lithium into the water supply. Now, what in the hell is the benefit of lithium to the population? For most people who don't know, let me let you in on this. Lithium, of course, my car battery, it's lithium ion. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Lithium, when it's consumed by people, all right, if you go to a psych ward, all right, if you go to a psych ward, inevitably you will run into somebody with the lithium shuffle. That's how they referred to it back in the day. It still applies. The lithium shuffle is essentially what happens when an individual has been on lithium for an extended period of time, and lithium is also used as an antipsychotic agent. Essentially, what it does is, if I remember correctly, it blows holes into the brain. All right, very small holes, starts degrading your frontal cortex. All right, which is responsible for your rational decision making. At the front level, on the sales side, I guess, we can call it, equate it to. At the front level, at the fore level, it is a way to make people more docile and less aggressive. Long term use, on the other hand, after it does a varying level of damage to the brain, um, yes, it may make people more docile, but when they do get aggressive, they get explosively aggressive. All right. Now, this is particularly pronounced because a lot of old timers who start going senile, they run into the issue where they get this furious frustration tied to the fact that they're trying to remember something but can't. All right. And a lot of nursing homes, actually, a lot of people don't know this. A lot of nursing homes have been pumping the old timers with prescriptions left and right. And they're starting to get, they're going after them now for it. They were overprescribing antipsychotics like lithium, and essentially doing a tremendous amount of brain damage to otherwise sane and stable people. All right. Makes people more docile, but makes them more unstable when they do destabilize. Okay. Now, why in the fuck would they want to put that in the water supply? To make people more docile? Okay. Referencing the part where they become more explosive over time when they do pop, I want you to, considering it's been quite a few years since the coof, I want you to just sit back and look at the world and look at the population and look at how aggressive and angry people are becoming. Okay? Now, if you had an entire population quietly being dosed with a substance that causes brain damage specifically to the regions of the brain that are responsible for rational decision making and emotional control, um, do you think these results would line up if possibly the water supply was full of lithium? Think about it. Think about it. Oh, there was something else I'm supposed to tie in here. What was it? Oh, lithium in the water supply, antipsychotics, fluoride. Oh, damn. Damn. I'm missing something here. Give me just a moment. My apologies. I just remembered. All right. The other thing, this coincides with the push to put lithium into the water supplies. But before we move on there, I want you to focus on the fact that people have been largely docile, but at least in public, have been more explosive as of late. People are crashing out more often. They're starting to quote unquote lose their shit. All right. And it's at the little things. It might not necessarily be them, it might legitimately be the consequences of the public water supply being quietly tainted. All right. There has been work to pull fluoride out of the water supply, but there's not too much interest in pulling lithium out of the water supply because, as far as anybody knows, it's not in there. But honestly, I would like to see some independent studies focusing on this. We already know that city water supplies like New York and the rest, the city water supplies are full of estrogen because of the amount of women taking birth control pills, and they're also full, like, given you can't filter out everything, all right? But there is speed and all sorts of other street drugs that can't fully be cleaned out of the water supply. So you've got estrogen and uppers mostly, all right? In small amounts. Well, maybe not less so the estrogen, but more so the street drugs. Those are less likely to be found in the public water supply. Anyway, the other thing that coincided with the push to put lithium into the public water supply was also the push to pump straight effluent into your water supply if you use public water services. What in the hell is effluent? Okay. So let's just imagine you have a gigantic tank full of shit water. Okay. There's no nice way to put this. I'm sorry. Let's say you have an entire tank full of shit water. You throw in a chemical agent, all right, that will separate the solids from the liquids, all right? So you take the solid shit and sink it to the bottom, compress it, get rid of it, and you take the liquid, which is still shitified. You take the liquid, and that at that point is essentially effluent. It hasn't been sterilized, cleaned, processed. It didn't go through reverse osmosis, no CO2 scrubbing, none of that. Okay. And they're looking at this more and more when it comes considering the water shortages, especially out west. But there's also the occasional issue with water down south. All right. Large population centers. I want to say it was in the Atlanta area. But large population centers, of course, have a high water demand. People use it as use it as you would expect people to use it. Anyway, the shit water effluent, all right, mostly gets discharged, but not into the public water supply. All right. Now, of course, you would want to process it, and, make it actually potable, and then pump it into the water supply, and then have concentrated effluent released in a low harm environment, low risk environment. Because of course you still got to do something with the concentrated toxins in it. Okay. This is where we get the divergence because the same billionaires that people will fawn over as if they're, wonderful people who've done so much for the world, certain billionaires, can't say which, but certain billionaires are very intent, or were very intent in the times when they were when there was the push to put lithium officially in the water supply. There was a push to pump straight effluent shit water into the public water system. Okay? I just want to remind those of you who are new to this, because most people know about fluoride from the old days listening to Jonesy. But what a lot of people still refuse to, they refuse to understand the frenetic kinetic nature of all of the things that are going on around them. And I know it's difficult to keep up with a lot of this shit. But this is actually another thing before we go further on effluent. The chlorine. All right, so public water, city water is chlorinated. All right. Now, the standard process, of course, most people know, preppers know especially, that if you want to put a bunch of water into a jug, fill a gallon jug, you throw a drop of chlorine in there, a drop of bleach in there, so the water will keep. All right. If you don't do it, the water is stagnant, it gets slimy, you get bacterial, fungal, all sorts of weird shit growing in there. And at that point, you don't want to drink it. You could probably still drink it and be fine depending on the circumstances, but in a lot of cases, you'd have to be crazy to drink slimy, stale ass water. Okay. Now, here's the thing with the amount of water that flows through public water systems, originally they did use effectively, liquid chlorine, okay, in order to clean it up and sterilize it. But that was not necessarily, it's impossible to necessarily dose the chlorine correctly. So there are tons of people, especially people who live in areas closer to water treatment plants, who were likely ingesting excess amounts of chlorine. Okay. Now, this started to change a little bit when they started shifting over to jellified. Whoop, apologies. When they started switching over to jellified chlorinated products. Okay. That way they can maintain a stable diffusion over time as it goes through the city public water system. But it's an important point to note that just because jellified chlorine products exist and they can diffuse over the network in a more reasonable, dosable fashion, okay? In terms of the liquefied chlorine product, they can't necessarily dose it from the plant to your tap correctly. Okay, so there are definitely people who have been ingesting way too much chlorinated product, all right, over the years, and we have no idea how much damage that actually does. Honestly, it would not surprise me if you were to take a map of people with, well, honestly, it wouldn't be Crohn's disease. I'm pretty sure that is tied specifically to a certain agricultural product that we can't mention. But if you were to map areas around water treatment plants and try to compare the medical records, you'd probably find a similar result, and it would probably come from a result of ingesting too much quote unquote chlorinated product. Anyway, back to the effluent. The billionaires that people fawn over literally would like to pump shit water directly into the pipes and essentially just hope and pray that the amount of jellified chlorine in the systems will at the very least sanitize the stank water. Okay. This is one of, I don't know, probably 8 reasons that I just gave you why you shouldn't trust the public water supply. But at the same time, you can't necessarily trust the public water either. or not the public water, oh, the mm, plastic mass market water bottles, bottlers, any of that. All right, because even though it's officially spring water in a lot of cases, the reality is you don't know where the water's coming from. If it's coming from an area that has a lithium deposit, all right, nearby, then obviously there'll be some lithium leaching into the water. Or in the case of one bottled water brand, there is a excess amount of radium that is supposedly being found in it. Now, radium was the original, glow in the dark paint, which led to all sorts of cancers and problems that come from that. Essentially, I'm going to end it on this because this shouldn't have been 20 plus minutes. Water is precious. You should absolutely find new and better ways to keep water clean and pure and try to filter out as much of the nasty as you can. And most importantly, um, mm, you want to control your exposure to public water supplies. All right, I'll put it that way. Control your exposure, limit your exposure to public water supplies because honestly, you have no idea what all is going on with the public water, and I'm growing more suspicious over time, as you should be too. Okay? Also, as a side note, when it comes to the chlorination process, the amount of mineral buildup, especially in the average home's plumbing systems, the amount of mineral buildup is so massive that that too also has an effect. You have no idea how much heavy metals you might be getting in excess because if you cut open an old piece of pipe, you will see mineralization. All right. At worst, honestly, the worst thing that you could see is, the weak spots forming from fungal molds. There's a specific kind of mold that it gets into the plumbing systems and it eats, apologies, it eats the iron. It like leaches the iron trace elements out of copper piping and it will lead to structural weakness, fracturing, cracks, all sorts of issues from that. It's the same mold that, if you have it, your toilets and your sinks will get that orangey pink kind of mold. All right, that fungus. That's how you know you have it in your pipes. All right. Anyway, this shouldn't have been over 20 minutes of talking about random water things that you should know, but now you know. Limit your exposure. Uh, Try to, honestly, independently, you should test your local water supply if you rely on public water systems. Okay. And I guess I'll end it here. I don't know exactly where I was going with this. I kind of lost track as I was going. Anyway, if you like and appreciate the video, like, favorite, sub, share, do all the things, ring the bell, ding the bell, tickle the bell, do all the things to your heart's content to the bell, leave a comment, hype it. If you are interested in the written content, check out the Substack in the description box below. And if you are interested in personal business or sovereign consulting, stop by www.spadesconsulting.com without the dash. And with that, I will see you all next time.